right, so we're now in managed care contracting. We're going to go over the second objective. Our second objective is to gain an understanding of the contract structure and language elements. So, I would like a contract. I'm a nurse practitioner. Can you send me a nurse practitioner contract? No, there is no such thing as a nurse practitioner contract. It is a professional service agreement. It can be called a provider service agreement. It may even be called a physician service agreement. Well, I'm not a physician. I'm a nurse practitioner. Remember, nurse practitioners who provide physician services is what's reimbursable. So technically you are a physician service agreement provider because you as a nurse practitioner providing nursing services isn't a covered benefit. You providing physician services is a covered benefit. That falls to the physician service agreement. Those are the three names of the contract you're looking for. Now you might look at a group agreement and say, well, there are 5 of us in a group, and we would like a group agreement, and we're going to list each of us in an exhibit. Perfect. Guess what? Groups are typically for more or 20. And let's chat about why for a minute. If I have a group of 5 as a health plan, think of me as the Mr. Health Plan. You have a group of 5. I'm going to give you a group agreement. 2 people in the group get angry, leave. Well, now all of a sudden I lost 2 providers in my network that I've spent time to build, create, manage, and do this contract with you as a health plan and spend expressing my administrative dollars to get this deal in place so you could see a patient. I'm going to say, no. If there's 5 of you, I'm going to contract individually with all 5, and I don't really care about the employment status. But I contract individually with all 5 of you, so if 2 decide to run down the street and do their own practice, I've already got them under contract. They can go down the street. Now, you might say, well, no, I don't want them to compete with me, blah, blah, blah. That's not the health plan's issue at this point. So unless you have a group of 20 or more providers, it's unlikely you're going to get a group agreement. You're going to have a solo or small group agreements. They don't exist. You're going to get 5 individuals. All 5 providers are going to sign it. You can have the same remittance information, but you're going to basically have all individual agreements. So we're going to ask for a professional services agreement. And we're likely not going to get a group contract unless you've got 20-some providers. What's the language elements? Check this out. There's like 106 different elements in a contract. Now, we're going to highlight on a few of these, and then in the contract you're going to read, some of this is going to come jumping out at you really fast. But there's many different elements and things that should be defined about how we're going to do business together because someone other than the patient is paying for services. So let's chat about our new relationship because the patient's no longer part of it. So, access. I'm going to probably as a health plan, I'm going to talk as a health plan, is I need access to your records because if I'm going to pay you and I decide that maybe you didn't provide services or maybe you're billing for dead people, I'm going to want to have access to go back and look at those contracts or look at your records later. So that's going to be a clause in my agreement. I'm going to use the word affiliates because anybody affiliated with me, typically if they own over 50%, I have an ownership of 50%, they get the discount too. So wait, who are all these affiliates? Don't worry about it. I'm just going to reference them as anybody that's affiliated with me. I may or may not put a logo on the card, but that's something you want to technically tend to define. Balanced billing members. I'm going to tell you if I'm responsible for the bill and I'm supposed to pay you $80 and the patient's supposed to pay you $20, you can never go after that patient for the $80 I owe you. Now, if I didn't pay you the $80, oh well, that's between you and me. You can't bill the patient for it. Now, that's called balanced billing members. And you could say, well, I want to strike that language. Well, it's actually HMO law, it's insurance law. You're going to have challenge on that, but you got to understand that that $80 you're going to have to me as the health plan. I'm going to define what I'm going to pay you. I'm going to tell you what covered services are. If it's not something I cover, the patient's responsible for it. And I'm likely going to tell you if the patient's responsible for it, you better tell them up front and get their written signature that says, Grandma here is not paying for it. You got to get their signature to let them know that Grandma's not paying for it. Dispute resolution. I'm going to tell you how to argue with me. And I'm going to tell you we're not going to have a jury trial. I'm going to tell you that I'm not going to let you join a class action lawsuit in the agreement because I've learned my lesson. And I'm going to have all this language that says you don't have any other legal remedies. You're going to see this in the contract you're about to review. Hold harmless, kind of a balanced billing. I'm going to say, look, I have to hold the patient responsible for $20. Everything else, you got to let them go. I'm going to tell you I'm going to handle overpayments. If I overpay you, I'm taking the money back. How am I going to take it back? Well, I'm going to tell you. That's going to be language in the contract. I'm going to talk about procedures. I'm going to talk about the term. And I'm going to talk about the fact that if you dump out of my network, I'm still going to make you responsible for a proper transition of care defined on certain laws or regulations about how long you'll see that patient afterwards. So, once I sign this contract, you have to comply. So, what are you doing? We've identified a handful of terms or things that your practice should know that allows you to perform successfully in the managed care arrangement, to properly conduct yourself so you don't get smacked on the back of your hand, you don't get penalties and fines assessed to you, and you actually get paid for the services you're rendering. Now all of a sudden you might be thinking, oh my gosh, let's go back and review the first video on what is my out-of-network strategy, and why am I signing a contract, and I'm taking how much of a discount, and I have all these obligations. Wait a minute, let's start balancing this out. So, things you want to know. What's the actual logo look like? I'm going to have my front desk looking at the card. They're going to be looking for a logo for this new contract I signed. What's it even look like? What's the card even going to say? Who are all these other affiliates? I want to know who they are. Who has access to the discounts? What type of agreement is this? What's your website? What's on your website? Where do I get the rules and regulations? What are the products am I in? Am I in the HMO, the PPO, the EPO? Am I in a self-funded? Am I in the active military? What's the products that I'm now in and part of? Where do I send my claims? How much am I getting paid? Who do I argue with? These are all things you operationally got to define from the contract. Yet, we still have providers that go, oh, here, just me sign it. I can't negotiate that anyway. I'm just a single individual provider. Just sign it and move on. I'm sorry, but you signed the contract. You're now obligated to know what's in it and how you're going to operationalize it. And I will agree. Small practices, you don't necessarily have leverage to negotiate. That Cigna agreement where we just read about, you're not going to negotiate that out of there and just say, well, I don't think that's very fair, and I want that stricken from my contract, and I'm a nurse practitioner group of 2. Cigna's going to be like, seriously? We already have a network. We don't really need you. And in fact, we're wasting our resources contracting with you right now. It's a take it or leave it. Well, okay, you decide to take it. What's that mean? That means you do not tell that Cigna member which cardiologist by name you want them to go see. You say, I need you to go see a cardiologist. I recommend you find one in network or see whoever you'd like to see. Enjoy your Google search. Because as soon as you put a name on it and write that name on that referral, you've now become obligated to pay that claim if that provider changed carriers or is no longer contracted in that exact moment. That is not something, as your practice administrator, I'm going to allow you to do because I'm not eating it. So, things you got to know is what's the operational requirements you just undertook. So, few contract elements. Here's the fun part is when you review the actual contract and go through the exam and you see the questions and all the narrative I wrote around each question, you're going to become so intimate with the structure of a contract and the language elements of a contract. I'm really not worried that this was such a short little presentation section. So happy reading on that. Can't wait to hear have some dialogue on it. And now we're going to talk about our third objective and our final objective.